Chuck Chuck Burr is our next speaker. He's with Nebraska. He's Nebraska Extension Cropping Systems educator in Lincoln County, and he works with a system. Irrigation is only part of the farming process, and I've asked Chuck if he would talk about the TAP system that they've instituted at the University of Nebraska. So, Chuck, I'll turn it over to you. You can explain
Yeah,
what TAPS is to the audience. I think they'll find it interesting.
yeah. So can you hear me all right?
I can.
Sounds good. We'll get this rolling. So like Tom said, my name is Chuck Burr. I'm an extension educator located at North Platte, Nebraska. A couple others on our leadership team for this TAPS program are Darren Rudnick. Darren is our irrigation specialist, was based in North Platte, but he moved to Lincoln here about a year and a half ago, but still does quite a bit of work out at North Platte. And then Matt Stockton is an extension economist based here in North Platte. We've got several others on the leadership team: Cody Creech, Jessica Groskopf, and Robert Tigner. They all work for Nebraska Extension, and Jason Warren works with Oklahoma State University Extension. So also we have a management team. They're the ones that get all the work done on a day-to-day basis. So TAPS stands for Testing Ag Performance Solutions. So there's a lot of technology available in agriculture today. TAPS is really, we started TAPS really to expose producers to this technology, and also for us as a university to be able to evaluate this technology so that we can make recommendations to our producers on what's feasible to make irrigation and nitrogen and other types of decisions in their farming operation. So there's really kind of three main concepts here in the TAPS program that kind of focus on self-motivation, self-reliance and learning, and adaptive management. And those three things are competition. Competition really is the driver of innovation. You don't really know how good you are until you compete against somebody else and see what your strengths are and your weaknesses are. And TAPS has been a pretty major player in helping producers figure out, what they need to improve upon and what they're doing a good job at. The second would be peer-to-peer. Farmers like talking to other farmers to learn what they do in their operation. I've been with a university for 34 years now, and I fully realize some producers don't want to listen to the university for whatever reason. They would rather listen to how a farmer who's actually, in the tractor on a day-to-day basis making the decisions. And I would say before TAPS, a lot of our producers have been fairly hesitant to share with their peers, their neighbors. They don't want to give away maybe trade secrets of how efficient they are or how profitable they are, realizing that somebody might be able to compete with them when they go to expand their operation to buy more land or pay a higher cash rent. But in the TAPS competition, especially our award winners have been very good about sharing what they do and what they did in TAPS, which pretty good percentage of them also do the same thing on their own operation. So it's really opened up that conversation between producers, and I think that's been very valuable for everybody involved. And the third is just kind of experiential learning. With all this new technology, the farmers, participants get to try it out and see how it works without any cost or any risk. So the companies pretty much provide this technology free of charge. The farmers get to use it to make their decisions in the TAPS plots. And with no risk, if you decide to really watch things, watch a soil moisture probe to schedule irrigations, and if it doesn't work out for you, so what? You didn't win the cash award. At least you didn't lose money on your farming operation. So really no risk to be able to try some of this technology and to see if it has application for your operation back home. So the peer-to-peer networking has been really huge for us. In the lower left there, you can see we have a kickoff meeting every spring, usually in March, where everybody comes together. We talk to them about what the rules of the competition are, because it is a competition. You have to have rules to make it as fair as we can. And then, there's a chance for them to visit with others. Hey, there's Tim Schmickley who won 2 years ago, the efficiency. I'm going to go talk to him and learn from him. So that peer-to-peer learning is there as well. In the middle picture there, we do have a summer field tour, COVID permitting, to where they can come out and take a look at the plots, see what their corn or sorghum looks like compared to others. And again, another chance for learning. And then the upper right-hand corner, we do have a Water and Crops Field Day in North Platte every year. A fairly large event, usually 200 to 300 people will attend that. A lot of industry there. You see a lot of tents and booths where the industry can share their information, their tools with the producers, and get some questions answered right there. And again, we have quite a few of our participants serve on a producer panel. So they're talking about their operation and their TAPS experience and being able to share that with others. And then we've also used some of our award winners as in breakout sessions. So an economic session, we would have a couple of our producers that have done a good job of marketing their grain, for example, talk about that at our field day. So again, others can learn from that. So a year ago, we did a survey at the end of the season. We asked our participants, what is one word that describes your TAPS experience? And the words that are larger print and bolded, more than one producer would have, or participant would have said that. You know, the things like informational, educational, informative, those are things that I would expect. This is an extension program, so we try to make it as educational as possible. A couple of them that really kind of jump out to me as being a little bit different. Unexpected, surprising, shocking, hair pulling, humbling, and also reality. So we'll get into kind of some educational theory here a little bit towards the end of my talk, but you know, how do we get producers to realize that maybe there's a better way of doing things? TAPS has been able to do that. It's made them humble. You know, maybe the things they've been doing in the past maybe aren't as efficient or as profitable as they could be. The reality one really stands out to me. You know, I've had some people say, well, TAPS is just a game, you know, it's a game. Well, it is a game, and I agree with that, but it really reflects reality. You know, if you do a good job with cost cutting and yield or hybrid selection and get a good yield and good job marketing it, it really reflects what's going on in today's agriculture. So we do want to thank our partners and sponsors, a lot of industry. You see on the left, we got some financial institutions. They pretty much provide money that helps us to pay cash awards. A lot of seed companies there. They would provide recommended hybrids for our plots in North Platte and then provide us a bag of seed. So if a producer selects that hybrid, then we have that seed free of charge. A lot of ag industry, you see, you know, like AquaSpy, TerraAvion, Climate Corp, a lot of different companies that are working with us, again, providing equipment, technology, techniques, and services to our participants so they can try that out. Commodity boards and regulatory agencies have been very good for us. Our natural resource districts in Nebraska would be somewhat similar to your county soil and water conservation districts, but ours are multi-state and watershed based. Again, they provide some funding to help us pay out cash awards. Nebraska Corn Board's been huge for us to provide funding to allow us to collect a lot of data out in the field and really make sense of all these different tools and technologies that are available to the producers and some nonprofits as well. We did just receive an NRCS CIG grant to expand TAPS into multiple locations in the Midwest. So we do give out 3 awards. The first one is the most economically profitable. They get a check for $2,000. And basically what we do there, we use our Nebraska crop budgets. We select a budget, and that basically gets us operating costs, except for the 6 decisions that the producers make a decision on. So, you know, field operations is in there, land, return to management, taxes, things like that. Our land costs are fairly similar to what a cash rent in this area would be, or if you own the land would be return on investment and cover your taxes and stuff. So all the expenses are in there. So we feel like it does a pretty good job of calculating what the cost is to produce a bushel of corn. And then based on how they market their grain throughout the year, you know, that's all tied into profitability. Like I said, they get a check for $2,000. We do give an award for highest input use efficiency. This water nitrogen intensification performance index was actually developed in North Platte by a graduate student after I asked him to take a look at this and to see how we could evaluate this. It's a check for $1,000. So I'll kind of describe this. The top part of the equation is the yield on your farm. So if you're a participant, what yield did you get at the end of the year? We divide that by the yield of a control plot. So that's one that the university plants with no water and no nitrogen. So how much of a yield bump did you get for the water and nitrogen that you applied? We divide that by two factors. One on the bottom here is how much irrigation water did you apply for your farm or your plots, divided by the crop water use, or the ET of again, that control plot that got no irrigation water. And then the other factor it's divided by is how much nitrogen did you apply for your farm or your plot, divided by the amount of nitrogen uptake by this control plot. So, you know, most efficiency factors, the highest factor or highest result would be if you put that first inch of water on, or the first 10 pounds of nitrogen on, you're going to get that biggest boost. That's not what we wanted to reward in this TAPS competition. So that's why we have that yield factor in there. We want to see, you know, which producers are producing at a high level, but being efficient at doing that. And when we look at some of the results, I think you can see that we've done a pretty good job of calculating that and rewarding that. The third award we give is greatest grain yield. It's a check. It's a base of $500, but we multiply that by the percentage of how profitable that farm was versus the most profitable farm. So if you're, you know, gunning for that greatest grain yield and you put a ton of water and a ton of nitrogen on, you know, just trying to get those extra couple bushels to win that, your check's going to be fairly small because you spent a lot of extra money just trying to get that. And again, that's not something we want to reward. And actually, several of our natural resource districts questioned, why are you rewarding greatest grain yield? It should all be about profitability and efficiency. And we thought about it, and we really realized, you know, if we don't recognize greatest grain yield, a producer on the outside looking in may say, well, in my operation, I go for greatest grain yield, so none of this applies to me. You know, we didn't want that to happen. And the other thing that we thought about was, you know, what is our greatest grain yield, and really how close is it to our most efficient yield? And I'm really glad we've done that, because you can see in some of the results, they're one and the same in a lot of cases. Our most efficient yield is also our greatest grain yield. You see a picture on the upper right-hand corner here. That's one of our teams, the Big Cob Bin Busters. They were in the subsurface drip irrigation competition. They were a Triple Crown winner. They were the most profitable, had the highest input use efficiency, and they had the greatest grain yield. So that's the first time that's happened in our 3 years of the competition. And again, it just goes to kind of dispel that myth of you have to give up yield to be efficient. That's not true. We're able to do that, and we've had several participants really demonstrate that. So kind of the overview, all the plots are planted in one field in North Platte. We've got 3 different competitions, and we have a simulated farm size. So I'll just talk about our sprinkler corn competition. So even though your plots amount to probably less than an acre, all 3 of them total together would be less than an acre, that yield we ramp up to 3,000 acres. So that gives you an amount of grain that you have to yield that would be similar to a farming operation in this part of the state. The management decisions, they select an insurance package, select a hybrid they want planted, and a seeding rate. They decide how much nitrogen, when to apply that. They can apply a pre-plant, side dress, and then we have 3 or 4 different fertigation options depending on our competition. Irrigation management tell us when to water and how much water to apply. And then again, in marketing, and that could be forward contracting, a cash sale. They can do hedge to arrive. They can do futures contracts and basis contracts as well to be able to market and set prices for their grain. On the right-hand side, you see here we've got a form that is actually submitted. So if they want to tell us, you know, hey, put 90 pounds of pre-plant nitrogen on and submit the form, we get an email that's time-stamped, so we know when they made that decision, and we have a record of that, and that allows us to build our prescriptions for nitrogen and water, and then also record marketing decisions as well. And we can go back and kind of fact check those to make sure that if they said they sold the corn for $4.04, it was actually that price at that point on that day. So that allows us to do some fact checking. Just as an example, on the irrigation scheduling, we do irrigate on Mondays and Thursdays. They can put 0 up to a full inch on each application. They do know that there's a fixed cost. One of our competitions, it costs $7.80 per acre inch of water applied. So they know that going in, you know, what it's going to cost them to put water on. And they have until 10 o'clock that morning to make their decision. And again, they submit that form online We get the information, we build a prescription map and put it into our prescription into our pivot, and the Zematic VRI pivot applies water to their plot specifically what they asked for. They can schedule up to 2 weeks in advance. So if they get busy during the season and say, hey, I don't want to mess with taps, I just want to put on 2 inches per week, they can do that up to 2 weeks ahead of time. And then if we happen to get a big rain, you know, over a ½ inch, we will just cancel the irrigation for that day. We don't want to penalize somebody for saying they wanted to put an inch on, and then if we get an inch of rain, you know, go ahead and apply that. So we will cancel that irrigation for the day. So this is kind of our timeline. We have our kickoff meeting in early March. They have to make their crop insurance selection by the 20th of March. In April on the 10th, they have to tell us how much pre-plant nitrogen to put down. They select their hybrid and seeding rate as well. The rest of the nitrogen and fertigations are basically according to crop progress. So as we hit different growth stages, we'll apply that nitrogen. Irrigation management typically is available from planting to harvest. So they can make that decision again twice a week throughout the season. Then marketing of their grain is pretty much the 1st of March to the end of November. You can see here our first year we had, I think, 17 participants. The UNL team up in top center here. We had a plot in there as well. We wanted to see how we competed against the producers. A lot of these other producers were acquaintances of mine over the years. I've worked in several locations in the state of Nebraska over the last 30 years. Some of them are NRD board members. So, you know, they're kind of out in the public and have a lot of information, a lot of public awareness. So that was the first year. Things have really expanded. This past year, we can see we've added some competitions. So we've got 3 in North Platte. We've got a dryland winter wheat competition in Sydney. That's out in the panhandle of Nebraska. And then a couple of smaller competitions down in Oklahoma. So you can see right now we cover a pretty large sector of the crop growing areas of Nebraska, not much up in the sandhills, not a lot of crops up there, but Kansas and Colorado, as well as producers from Texas competing as well. So this is what some of our contestants told us why they were competing, you know, a different perspective, interested in seeing how everyone has a different philosophy in growing crops, seeing if reducing fertilizer and irrigation actually reduces yield, how far can we go. Cole Simmons here is a farm manager, so TAPS has afforded him the opportunity to be a farmer in every sense of the word except actually writing the checks. So I think he enjoyed that. And Mark Ryman, he actually works for Burr out of Gothenburg. He loves it because it's really an experiment where there's so many choices that nobody's going to do things the same way. And we can really go back and evaluate, you know, who made the best decisions and why did they make those decisions. So like I said, a lot of technology provided. We've got several companies that provide satellite imagery. We've got a couple of them that fly the plots every couple of weeks providing aerial imagery. We've got a lot of soil moisture sensors out there. The producers actually get to pick which soil moisture sensor or irrigation scheduling tool they want to have in their plot. And then on the bottom part there, we're collecting a lot of data. We've got some crop circles and apogee IRTs out there collecting data every couple weeks. With all these different water and nitrogen scenarios out there, it really gives us the opportunity to evaluate the canopy and see what the canopy is telling us. You know, are they water stressed? Are they plant water or nitrogen stressed? And we're able to pick that up with those sensors. We collect a lot of soil samples, plant tissue samples at the end of the year, and then we provide crop scouting as well for the participants. So a lot of our participants are quite a ways away, some of them several hundred miles away from our plots here in North Platte. It's not like they're going to drive to the field once a week and check their plots, right? So we do take pictures every couple of weeks, provide them with that information, as well as update of crop progress as we go through the season. A lot of changes in marketing. I don't have the 2020 markets on here because we basically just finished that the competition up here a couple of weeks ago. But a lot of variability in terms of, you know, when's the best time to market. And of course, 2020 with the high prices here at harvest, just gives us another scenario, I guess, to go through and talk about marketing. You know, what's our best possibilities there and our opportunities to take price advantages when we can. Rainfall, again, I don't have the 2020 information in here, but we had a couple pretty wet years in there. 2020 was very dry for us. We really saw a big impact, if you will, of irrigating, crop response, yield response due to irrigation that we haven't seen in the last several years. So from a research standpoint, it's exciting to have a dry year, but I know the producers would have rather had the rain and not had the research results from a dry year. So just as an example, we do have a sprinkler sorghum competition. These are the plots again, we have 3 replications. So farm 1 has 3 replications in each of these 3 blocks. That allows us to run some statistics at the end of the season when we start to look at results. And also we've had a few issues where we've had to abandon some plots. So one year we had a tower boot break and we flooded a plot or 2. So we basically just threw those out. We had 2 other good plots to allow us to get a pretty good handle on what the yields were. Just one slide here on sorghum. And I know you don't grow a lot of sorghum up in North Dakota, but it really reflects the profitability of sorghum. At least it did in 2019. That's the results you're looking at. The producers on the right, made $30 to $70 per acre. So if they really watched their costs and did a good job marketing, they made pretty good money. Those that didn't watch their costs and didn't market lost $80 to $90 an acre. And we've had several bankers tell us that TAPS really reflects the ag economy at that point in time. We did a subsurface drip competition. EcoDrip actually came to us and installed a subsurface drip irrigation system. You can see the plots here. So we can individually water 96 different plots. We can apply water individually. We can apply nitrogen individually to these plots. So that really gives us a good opportunity to look at subsurface drip and what the advantages are of that and how to manage that. Kind of interesting on the nitrogen aspect. So you see here farm 2, that's our control plot that got no water, no nitrogen. Other than that, the participants applied 120 to 220 pounds of nitrogen. And for me as an extension person, that's a huge range. Probably the 150 to 160 was kind of the optimal rate. We've got a lot of producers putting on a lot of nitrogen, more than they really need, because they haven't really been able to compare themselves to other producers and see what's been done. And then we'll talk about that again in that educational theory here in a little bit. But a huge range in terms of how much nitrogen was applied. Our sprinkler competition, that's the one you guys would probably be most interested in. We had 24 teams this last year. That'll be expanded into the 30s for 2021. So if you want to compete, we would love to have some producers from North Dakota compete in our TAPS competition. You can do it all remotely and from your phone or your computer screen. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us and let us know you're interested. So hybrid selection, you can see the different companies are different colors. So for example, Pioneer is the green bars, and you can see all the different hybrids and seeding rates that were planted. That's part of the TAPS competition. The nitrogen, again, in the sprinkler competition, plot 5 was the no nitrogen. Otherwise, we range from 140 up to 270 pounds of nitrogen. And again, our optimal rate, our UNL recommendation was right at 165 to 170 pounds of nitrogen. So we've got quite a few producers putting on quite a bit more nitrogen than they really need. Irrigation water, this is a little bit difficult to look at, but we had one farm that put on just 30 hundredths. That was likely a couple of fertigation applications where they had to apply, 30 hundredths of water to get 30 pounds of nitrogen on, up to almost 10 inches. So almost a 10-inch range in terms of how much water is being applied, again, to the same field. And from an extension perspective, that just kind of floors me that we have that high of application rates when it really wasn't needed. Sprinkler yield, now these results are actually 2019. We haven't announced our 2020 results yet. We'll have a virtual banquet in January. So if you want to participate in that and see how things turned out, we'd encourage you to tune in. We'll kind of focus on our control plot here, plot 9. We got 90 bushels with no irrigation water, no nitrogen. A lot of them in the 216s to 228, so pretty decent yields. And then we had 3 teams that really did, 238 to 241 in terms of yield. So just remember those plots, 10, 21, and 15 were our 3 high yields. So 10, 21, and 15. We look at our efficiency calculation. 10 and 15, both were the top 2 in terms of efficiency. So not only did they get the top yield, but they were right there where they needed to be in terms of efficiency. The blue dots would be how much irrigation water they applied. So they were in that, 2.5 inch range of irrigation water applied in 2019. In nitrogen, I've got to move this to see about 160 to 170 pounds of nitrogen they applied to get that at 241 bushels. So we said 2, 15, and 21 were our top yields. So look at 21 down here. They were the lowest efficiency. Yeah, they had the top yield, but look how much water and nitrogen they applied to get to that. So they likely over irrigated by 7 to 8 inches and probably put on 80 to 100 pounds more nitrogen than they really needed. So that's the exciting thing for me, for producers to be able to see, how did they rank out and how did somebody do something differently and get the same yields. Profitability, again, this is 2019. Our high was 293. Our control plot, we said, made even no water, no nitrogen on irrigated soils, they still made 10 bushel or $10 an acre. So a huge range, almost $300 difference in terms of profitability, depending on what you did for cost control, what you did for marketing, and how that all plays out. So we do give out the awards for the sprinkler. We had a Fontenelle team that had the highest grain yield and highest input efficiency. All 3 of our competitions this 2019, actually the high yield was also the most efficient yield. So that's really an extension story for me to tell. You don't have to give up yield to be efficient. We've got producers demonstrating that year in and year out. So just some kind of average results over a couple years. This is 2017, 2018. There's a correlation coefficient down here in R squared. The only thing that I'll probably tell you on that is the higher the number, the closer it gets to 1, the better. So basically that's telling us how close are all these data points, how close are they to this representative line that's drawn in between. You can see a lot of scatter, a lot of distance. The dots are not close to the line. So really there's no correlation between seeding rate and profitability. And that to me just goes back to hybrid selection. What seeding rate does your hybrid need to be planted at that you're using on your farm? And it tells me that it'd be well worth your time to do some seeding rate trials on your farm with the hybrids you plan to plant so you can find that optimal seeding rate to really drive your profit. Irrigation versus profit, 2017 and 18. Again, not much correlation there. It looks like a shotgun scatter plot. The size of the dots does indicate yield. So, irrigation versus profit and yield, not a lot of correlation in 2017 and 18. Again, that tells me that we need to be using soil moisture probes or ET calculations or something to schedule those irrigations, because we have people putting on 6, 7, 8 inches more water than they really need to be getting those top yields. Nitrogen versus profit, again, 2 years, 17 and 18, not much correlation there. Actually a downward sloping trend. So the more nitrogen you put on, you're going to lower your profitability. That would be the additional cost of the nitrogen that's not really needed. Yield versus profit. From what we found in the STAPS competition, there's no denying that yield is a huge factor in profitability. And it really makes sense. You got to have the bushels to be able to sell to make money, right? But again, if you look at the size of the dots indicate the size of the amount of irrigation. So here on this, what are we about 275 in terms of profitability? You can do that with very little irrigation or with a whole lot of irrigation. So that was kind of a wake-up call for extension that, yeah, we do need those top yields, but we can produce that yield efficiently. And then this is the one that really gets me excited about input use efficiency and profitability. You see our R squared is 0.8, so 80% correlation. See how close those dots are to the representative line? That really tells us that these two things are really, really closely linked. So if you want to make money, you need to increase your input use efficiency, and that will drive profitability. Just an example here, Tim Schmickley was our most efficient farmer the first 2 years. Tim has been very good about speaking at extension events. So I know he spoke at several extension events. AquaSpy was the probe that he used. He did a video for them. Darren Rudnick and I were actually down in Southwest Kansas, and we saw the video play of Tim Schmickley talking about the TAPS program and how he utilized the AquaSpy probe to be efficient. Tim owns several Harleys and, you know, wears a leather jacket, and how do you not trust a face like Tim Schmickley's? You know, when he talks to farmers, they're like, yeah, I can do that too. Just an example from that first year of Tim when he was the most efficient. This farm number 1 on the left side here, that would be their AquaSpy probe, how they manage soil water. This is the farm that put on about 7-8 inches more water than they really needed. You know, they kept that profile pretty wet the whole growing season. Tim was farm 15. We did have quite a bit of rain. That's why you see some blips up above the green part. That's kind of our target range. But Tim really allowed the soil water to get depleted, not only during the season, but at the end of the year as well. Oops, I just hit the forward button. So he let it dry down at the end of the year. And we got about 5 inches of rain after the growing season before the first of the year. So Tim stored probably 3.5 to 4 inches of that water. This farm 1 would have stored maybe 1 or 1.5 inches of that water. The rest of it went through the soil profile and ended up returning to groundwater, but it probably took a lot of nitrogen with it. And then farm 13, they had a similar amount of irrigation water applied that Tim Schmickley did. But if you look at the blip here in early July, they allowed it to get really dry. They went on vacation for a couple weeks and didn't really think about watering. And that was a critical growth stage. They allowed it to get too dry. And I think it hurt their yield by about 20 bushels. So watching soil water is a really good way to be efficient and also maintain those high yields. So we did a survey at the end of 2019. 42 of the 46 teams were surveyed. A couple of them declined our offer to participate in the survey. Some of them told us, you know, they wanted to learn from others, almost 90%. That's why they joined TAPS. The test new technology, almost 80%. And almost 30% wanted to benchmark their abilities relative to their peers. And I think as they've competed in TAPS, that's probably the most, that one probably would come up much higher in their ranking in terms of what, you know, what's been of value to them. The other thing that's been pretty exciting, 83% of them said that a neighbor or a friend or somebody has asked them, or they've talked with a neighbor or friend about their TAPS of experience. And there's been about over 12 people that each of these different teams have talked to, friends and neighbors. So we're getting the message much farther than just those competing in the TAPS competition. Some additional, this is kind of more targeted to irrigation management. So about 70% of the participants are thinking about adopting 1 or more irrigation management tools after competing in TAPS their first year. So almost 70%, we've changed how they think about these different irrigation management tools. 30% or 28% are already starting the adoption process. You know, they've contacted the soil moisture company and got a probe lined up for their farm for next year. You know, they're already starting to adopt that. So that's pretty exciting for me as an extension person to see that higher rate of adoption after 1 year. So if you look at the total of the 6 different decisions, so 100% have changed the way they think about 1 or more tools or technologies. That could be grain marketing, could be nitrogen management, could be hybrid selection. And 60% are already adopting 1 or more tools, so irrigation or nitrogen or marketing or something. 60% are already adopting a new tool or technique. Just a couple real quick stories. This is Ryan McDaniel. So his first year in TAPS at home, he applied 240 pounds of nitrogen, or he did that in his TAPS plot. He thought he was going to be on the low end of nitrogen application. He was actually second high, with his yield in the middle. So on his own farm, he used 220 pounds. In 2019, I talked to him this fall. He put on 180 pounds on his farm because that's what the winner of TAPS did. He got the same, well, the yield was about 13 bushels better. So he reduced his nitrogen application by 40 pounds an acre and the same or better yield. So that's a pretty exciting story for me. This is Tracy Zink down here. She was kind of embraced the mission of TAPS of evolving profitability, input use efficiency, and she had kind of that aha moment. And so now Tracy pretty much didn't look at marketing. She didn't follow the markets at all, put it in the bin at the end of the season or delivered it to the elevator. Now she's looking out 1 to 2 years, and it's really given her confidence on, marketing was not her strong suit. That's where she needed to improve. And TAPS gave her that awareness and that confidence to go ahead and do that. So the benchmarking and disorienting dilemma, just to finish up here, I don't want to get into educational theory too much, except that this is, I think, where extension needs to go. So benchmarking, how do your practices, how do your management strategies stack up against other peers? And the disoriented dilemma would be that producer that put on, an extra 8 inches of water and 100 pounds of nitrogen. How can that be? How can they get the same yield by putting on that much less? That's that disorienting dilemma. And just to kind of highlight that, we've got the 2017 Farm 4. They put on that 240 pounds of nitrogen, 9 inches of irrigation water, and their yield was 210. Farm 9 put on 175 pounds of nitrogen, 7 inches of water, and their yield was 261. So, kind of the both extremes on the scale of efficiency, 1st and 14th. And then we've had another team that's competed all 4 years. Would be team 15. So in 2017, they put on 200 pounds of nitrogen and way over irrigated. They were 10th in efficiency, so not very good. In the second year, they put on the same amount of nitrogen and really cut back, only put on 5.3 inches of water. They moved up to 4th in terms of efficiency. In 2019, that same team now dropped their nitrogen to 170 pounds, put on 2 inches of water, and they finished 2nd. So that's been how they've progressed over the years, become more and more efficient. And I've talked with these individuals, this team, they are doing the same thing on their farming operations. So they've had huge savings in terms of water pumping and nitrogen costs by cutting back and getting the same or better yields. We've had a lot of outputs. We did have an article in the Journal of Extension and the October issue come out, talk about TAPS. Nebraska farmers been huge for us. They interview our TAPS awards winners every year, kind of talk about the strategies, what did they do to be able to achieve those awards. We've got a TAPS monthly newsletter. We do tips from TAPS, which is an in-depth look at different like nitrogen management or hybrid selection. The commodity boards and NRDs have newsletters as well, where they put out information about the TAPS results. Social media, Twitter and YouTube are there as well. So lots of opportunities to learn from us. We do have a digital newsletter you can sign up for free of charge. Just go to our taps.unl.edu website. You can find it there. Like I said, tips from TAPS, written articles analyzing the data from different years. Again, the field tours, workshops, banquets, case studies, participant interviews. That's what we're going to focus on this next couple months, is interviewing our participants, get some more of those success stories and be able to share those as well. So if you want to follow us, there's our Twitter and a webpage and our digital newsletter. Feel free to reach out and check in with us, learn from us, participate if you want to be in the competition in 2021. We'd love to have you. And there's my email and my phone number. I do work from home, and that's my office number. I will check that a couple times a week for messages. So the best way to get a hold of me would be my email address, and I check that several times a day. So with that, we're probably getting close to being done with time. And I guess I'll kind of watch the chat for any questions there that I can respond to, or maybe as we get done today, we can have time for questions.
Yeah, Chuck,